Now for the final panel of the day. The topic of this panel is brand discovery in e-commerce. Panel members are Matt Nordby, partner of Lion Capital, Jeanine Silberblat, vice president of e-commerce and digital marketing, Pottery Barn Teen and Williams Sonoma, Ben Schwerin, senior vice president of content at Snap, and the moderator will be Imran Khan, the CEO of Verishop.
All right. Thank you so much for joining, and I appreciate David for inviting us. We have some great folks on the panel today who I'm so excited to have. Matt Nordby, who is the partner at Lion Capital and invested in so many great brands. Jeanine Silberblat, sorry, again, I'm messing up the name already, runs all marketing for Pottery Barn, and Ben Schwerin, who is a SVP of Partnership and Content at Snap. So guys, thank you so much for joining. Really, really excited about it. So Matt, let's start with you. So you have invested a lot of great brands, and I think when you evaluate a brand, when you make an investment, what are some of the things you're looking at, and as web is getting more and more crowded, how some of your brands are being discovered in the marketplace?
Yeah, thanks, Imran. Glad to be here. I think authenticity is the first thing you look for in a brand, and identifying the staying power and understanding who the consumer is. And a couple examples is we invested in a brand called All Saints, which is a brand based in London. And we do things like All Saints studio sections where we bring up-and-coming artists in and create music with wearing All Saints clothing, really creating an environment and atmosphere to define All Saints. And so I think experiential is a component of that. I also think as you look at customer acquisition, there's some interesting things you can be doing too. Zeta obviously is a good example of that, but there's some really interesting search engines and things coming out there. Business I'm affiliated with called Seeker, which is looking at sort of alternative ways to acquire customers and give brand activations and things like that. So those are some of the things you look at is the brand authentic, and then how can you extend that brand through various channels?
So Jeanine, you have a very unique role. You are responsible for driving traffic and audience for your brand, which is growing really well. Congratulations on what you have done. So how are you navigating in this crowded web to talk to your customers and find new customers?
Sure. So I focus on Pottery Barn Teen, and that business is unique because we have a dual customer base. There's the parent, who's the end purchaser, but you have the teen or tween, who's the influencer in the home. So you really have to think a lot about how do you the parent who's trying to tap into the teen interest and awareness, but also you're trying to convert the parent. So it really is a nuanced strategy across channel. You have to think about your voice, you have to think about the creative and the channel, and you might think, okay, Snap, nod to you, YouTube, TikTok, yes, those are kind of teen targeted channels, but we're also doing a lot across the traditional channels, but guess what? Parents are on TikTok as well. So it really is about what is your nuanced strategy for every customer.
And so maybe if I may follow up,
sure.
How are you managing all these channels, right? Because in old days you had television, and had a television strategy. And now each of the platforms are so different.
Yeah.
What are you doing about that?
I'm smiling because if my team hears the answer, I'm like, a small but mighty team. That's how we do it. But no, it really is kind of starting with being really clear on who our customer is and just figuring out what's the creative that you can leverage across platforms, being super clear where you need to be targeted and being really digital native about your strategy.
Great. So Ben, Snap obviously, is one of the largest platform, 500 million monthly active users, and you guys have a lot of data. So what is the next generation of consumers going digitally, right? What are the trends you're seeing, at Snapchat or other platforms?
So one thing that we have invested a lot in, as you know, we used to work together a long time ago, is Snap has invested a lot in augmented reality. And augmented reality really started as an entertainment platform, as a way to communicate. And now we have 250 million people interacting with augmented reality every day. So the use cases have expanded dramatically beyond entertainment. And commerce is something that we're really excited about, brands are really excited about, and is really resonating with consumers. So now you go on Snapchat and you have the opportunity to try on sneakers virtually from Gucci, or you have the opportunity to try on a watch from Piaget, or a jacket from North Face, or cosmetics from MAC. So what we're seeing is, as the technology has evolved and the experiences become more dynamic, more engaging, they're really driving conversions. They're leading to smarter purchasing decisions. So people are happier with the decisions that they're making. They're returning things less. And so there's a lot of value for brands and consumers with augmented reality, and that's where we're going to continue to invest.
So one of the things that many people bring up with augmented reality, that it's fairly complex. It's not like buying a banner advertising or sending out an email or creating a video ad. And it's also in many people's mind in cost prohibitive. So what are you doing in terms of driving down the cost, reducing the complexity, so that many more businesses can afford it?
I thought it was interesting. Tim Cook did an interview today, and someone asked him about augmented reality. He said there's going to come a time very soon where you can't imagine what your life was like before augmented reality. That's pretty powerful for him to say that, right? And I think we are just in the early innings of AR, and I think back to you, as some of you may know, Imran really started Snap's ad business 7 years ago, right? And at the time, we pioneered this concept of vertical video. Full screen vertical video. Everybody thought we were crazy, right? Brand said, this is too hard, this is complicated, who's gonna edit the video, who's gonna shoot the video, it only works here. And now it's obviously ubiquitous, right? And it's really easy and it's really scalable. And so what we're trying to do is democratize production of augmented reality. So part of that is 3D asset management and creation. So we acquired a company called Vertebrae, which helps brands create 3D assets, makes the process really easy and seamless. And then we have a product called Lens Studio, which is a piece of desktop software that anybody can use to take a 3D asset and turn it into a lens on Snapchat. So you're right. I think it is still, there is still a barrier to entry, but we're working really hard to reduce that. And what we're seeing is that brands are really now leaning into this always-on strategy because the ROI is there. So if the ads are working, which is what they did, I think, pretty well with vertical video, AR ads are working, it's driving conversions, and I think that's going to lead to an investment that's going to make it a lot easier to create these assets in the future.
That makes a lot of sense. So Jeanine, another thing that I would love to get your perspective is influencer marketing, right? We recently had an event at Verishop, where we had like 300 or so smaller brands came, and the single most important question that we heard from them: how can we make our influencer marketing work? So what's your view on influencer marketing? How are you thinking about for Pottery Barn Teen on the influencer marketing, and how do you really measure the result of this influencer marketing?
The age-old question. So it's interesting, right? Like any brand that's really thinking about their authentic voice is thinking about influencer marketing. And where we've found success is just, one, really spending a lot of time thinking about influencers who are on brand. I think that's the most important thing you could do as a brand, because ideally what you want to do is you have an influencer who's on brand, you educate them, tell them about the brand, like as you would, but then you step back and let them do their thing. I think the worst thing you could do is be heavy-handed. There were some comments in the earlier panels about like giving them a script. Like that's the wrong thing. But you spend a lot of time figuring out who the right person is, and then you let them speak to their audience in their voice. And that's where we've seen success with it. So the second part of your question now around measurement, there's a lot of conversation in this space, and I would say the short answer is we're all still trying to figure it out. But what I would say, and at Williams-Sonoma, I would say this is probably the strongest performance marketing team I've worked with in my career. So there's a lot of focus on ROI, but at the same time, I give our C-suites credit for saying like, okay, let's figure out what's the role of the influencer at the table. And a lot of that, where that conversation has gone is, okay, what's the right, the appropriate place in the conversion funnel to really think about how they contribute, and what are the right benchmarks and KPIs? And what we're finding, and of course, yep, we want every post to generate sales, sure, why not? But where we're seeing a lot of leverage is the power of the influencer to be a signal for the kind of creative we put in our paid channels that have a stronger ROI, and now all of a sudden, they have a role, they have a place. If you get into this place where you're like, okay, here's my ad cost on search, influencer match that, well, that's not gonna pencil. But when you think about their role as a signal, all of a sudden influencer marketing becomes a really, really powerful part of your mix.
So I want to take what Ben brought up and Jeanine's insight on influencer marketing and Ben's perspective on augmented reality and go to Matt. You sit on a lot of board, All Saints, Page, and how in the boardroom this conversation is happening, because as the marketing landscape is changing very dramatically, and there are a lot of new formats and new strategy, how is in the board level, how does that conversation and how does the profitability versus growth and how does those conversations are going?
Yeah, so I think it depends on the stage of the company. Obviously, profitability, when you talk about some of the brands that we're talking about, All Saints, Page, et cetera, that's forefront because they're large, profitable businesses. I think when you're talking about growth brands, that's a different function, right? So, there is an awareness at the board level. There is a focus. There's probably more than a third of the time is talking about how do we acquire new customers. And so there's a lot to do through digital channels, but one of the challenges there is it's ever changing, right? Do you go invest your money in Facebook and then there's privacy changes and then there's probably other platforms you can go do. You can go to a Zeta, other services that can help you address that. But I think in reality it's not one size fits all. Every brand has a different need and a different story. Some are focused on top line growth, some are focused on new customers. Probably unpopular to say at a conference like this, but there's still a really interesting story around footfall with the right store formats, right? And so you've seen the movement of digital D2C brands focused on how do we go and create an in-store experience as well. And I think you're gonna see more of that. People just need to be more judicious on how they're focused on buying real estate and investing in real estate. But I think the core is it's an omni-channel effort. I think every brand's different, so it's not a one size fits all.
I think maybe if I can double click, and I really like that in-store experience. So how, the brands that you are involved with, and you are in that business that you're looking at a lot of different brands, how do you think brands and businesses can think about building next generation experiences that complement their existing commerce strategy? So what kind of trend you're seeing, the companies that you invested or the companies that you're talking to?
Yeah, well, there's a period in my tenure around brands where I ran Playboy, and so that's 97% I needed global awareness, and from a brand perspective, it means a lot of things to different people, but in China, for example, it's one of the top 3 licensed brands, and there was no media presence there, and I think it's a good case study to answer your question, Imran, because when you think about it, well, how has this brand grown and been so prolific in a market like China? And the answer was, it's because in China, it was meant to represent freedom and a Western brand, and it was very exciting, and it was sort of a point of arrival. I liken it to the first time that I could afford a Tumi bag in business. It meant something to me. That was a moment of arrival. It was the same for people with Playboy in China. People would come from tier 3 and 4 cities into tier 2 cities and tier 1 cities and be able to buy this brand that represented Western luxury. And to them, that was a big deal. But brands mean different things in different markets. And so I think having that experiential element of the brand really helped create the halo that made that business so successful in those Asian markets. I think, if we talk about like All Saints, for example, I think the idea of incorporating music and fashion and people that just naturally wear your product, All Saints has no paid promotion of the brand. It is all organic. So when you see people in rock and roll or celebrities wearing the brand and it shows up in media outlets, it's because it's authentic that they want to be wearing that. And I think that authenticity speaks to our consumer. And so that's a good example of sort of creating an aura around music and fashion and that really is native and core to All Saints ethos.
So take the same question to you, Ben, in terms of, what kind of new experience brands can create, I have a hunch that you're going to talk about augmented reality, but how does Snap can help there? And talk about Snap's advanced technology that you guys really invested for a long period of time on camera. What does that mean for businesses?
Yeah, I think actually the creator conversation's interesting too, and I think that it's something that we are leaned into more now, I think, than we ever have. And I think that brands have an opportunity to combine a lot of these different pieces of the puzzle. So I think what you're finding now is like product discovery is happening a lot from influencers, right? Whether that's like organic, to your point, or it's seeing a creator or an influencer use a product or talk about a product in a TikTok video, that's a really powerful way for people to discover products. It's working, right? I think it's working, and I think some brands have been really smart about finding influencers whose engagement is translating into real business results. And I think for us, what we want to do is really empower brands to be able to say, hey, if this content is working that a creator makes, how do I take that content and boost it and put media behind it and then put a buy button on it? So really combine this organic discovery that's happening on these video platforms and say, hey, like, be able to identify that, put dollars behind it, target it, and then create an easy conversion to a sale. And for us, obviously, yes, augmented reality is a big part of that. We want people to be able to, as I said, make better purchasing decisions, have a more engaging shopping experience, being able to try something on, actually, no matter where you are in the world. I think this is something that during COVID, it was very obvious that people love to do this, right? To be able to see what clothing looked on yourself before you bought it from home. But that's something that is, I think, that's a long-term trend. And what we're seeing now as well, going back to the brick and mortar example, is Nike, for one, has what we call magic mirrors set up in their stores, where you can go and it's a big screen and it's running Snapchat and you can try on clothes virtually right there, and it just makes going to the store more fun. And obviously it's like people are more likely then to actually buy something physically when they've tried it on virtually. So we think that augmented reality and in-store experiences and this creator economy can all work together to create more value for brands over time.
So, I think the big question a lot of times, a lot of this augmented reality, that often those sizes are not accurate, and there's still, it doesn't feel completely authentic. So how far off this augmented reality journey we are on, from getting to that goal that we want to get there?
I think we're pretty early, but actually if you try this stuff, a lot of it's really good already. So I mentioned the shoe try on. That's something that's really good. So you can try on sneakers and they look great and it's very lifelike. Accessories, sunglasses, hats, all of this is really good now. So I think it's only going to get better, but I think people can make really smart decisions and have a really engaging experience with the technology that currently exists. We're also using 2D try-on for clothes. Obviously, clothes and fabric is a bit more challenging to get the fit right. I think that is something that we expect. We'll see big improvements over the next couple of years, but right now we have a 2D try-on technology where you take a selfie, a full body selfie, and then you can see different outfits. In fact, we just did a partnership with Vogue. They have an app called the Vogue Runway app where every week they show new looks from the top designers on the runway. And now they've integrated our camera into their app. So a big part of our strategy is taking our camera technology and ecosystem, taking it off Snapchat and allowing brands to integrate it onto their websites, into their apps. So Vogue's a great example of this 2D try-on where you can go on and see what the latest looks from the runway look like on you. And it's great. It's a great experience. So today it's a mix of this 2D and 3D. And I think as the technology evolves, the fidelity of the experiences get better. I think everything's going to end up being in 3D. And then when it comes to sizing, you're right. That's a challenge for all e-commerce. You probably could speak to this. But we acquired a company, which is part of Snap now, called Fit Analytics. And what Fit Analytics does is integrates with retailers. You enter your measurements, and it uses machine learning to recommend sizing. And it's very effective. So it allows consumers to, with a much higher degree of confidence, get the right size, and obviously then you're bringing returns down. But that's a challenge that I think we're going to solve with technology broadly.
So, we spent time talking about different kind of discovery, whether through its influencer marketing, whether it's through augmented reality. I want to go back to more on retention, because discovering is one thing and in an ever crowded market, but if you can retain the customers, that brings a lot of value. So I want, if Jeanine, can you talk about as this customer acquisition getting more and more expensive, what are you doing in terms of, building your CRM strategy, to retaining more customers and talk to your customers, primarily in a world that, the privacy is changing such a rapid pace, and how does the privacy world, new rules has changed your strategy?
Yeah, thank you for, we were chatting before, and just that privacy piece, super important to how we think about how brands should be thinking about their CRM strategy, because there's obviously a lot of sensitivity around that. And it's the elephant in the room, right? Like, no brand wants to be the brand kind of named for not getting that right and for being intrusive. And certainly for Pottery Barn Teen, where we're talking about, targeting under 18 customers, we're super sensitive to what is the right CRM strategy. And it's interesting, in my early conversations with David, like, one of the things that, struck me is how he wants Zeta to be on the right side of that and really out front on the compliance front. And I think, players who are sensitive to that will be the go-tos for CRM strategy. That's not an intended plug, but it's true. Yeah, it's true. But yeah, so in terms of Pottery Barn Teen and how we think about that, what that means is what we found to be effective is to really be more user-based and contextual in how we think about our CRM strategy. And so, what does that mean? If you all think about when we were teenagers, like, there were things that we were into, whether it was sports or dance, and that kind of defined us. And, many of us held on to that. So when you think about those contextual strategies, it allows us to really appeal to teens and beyond. And so what does that mean? Now you're on the right side of privacy policy and CRM strategies and retention. It's how we self-identify as a brand. So Pottery Barn Teen, yes, we're for teens, but a lot of our partnerships go well beyond that. Harry Potter, Hello Kitty, the fandom goes well beyond teenage years. And if you think about, most importantly, the customer, no one wants to be targeted because they're 14, right? Like, none of us want to be targeted because of our age. So it's this idea of, hey, I self-identify as all the communities that kind of make up the mosaic of who I am. So if I'm into gaming, if I'm into beauty, if I'm into Hello Kitty fans run from age 8 to 80. So, as we think about CRM and retaining customers and being authentic in the way we retain customers, it's about really being contextual and interest-based and being kind of on the right side of where CRM strategies should be going.
Great. So the next, we have 5-6 minutes left. I really want to talk about what you think, if next year, if David again invite us, what are the key topic will be in all of our mind. So maybe start with Matt. You spent a lot of time as an operator, president of Playboy, and then investing in all these brands. What do you think is, maybe give us some understanding, like, what was in the brand's mind, as you managed a brand, like, over the years, how that has changed, and what do you think will be the big change that's coming in next 12 to 18 months for these brands?
Well, I think the first thing is privacy. So I think you're seeing a lot of companies emerge that can help address that. And I don't know how many companies, I know Snap and Facebook were a bit flat-footed relative to some of the privacy changes in some of the iOS updates and others. And so I think those are hopefully behind us, but I still think privacy is going to be front center. And being able to reach your customer in a very thoughtful way, I think is going to be paramount. I think there's going to be a lot of independent brands that emerge. And one of the things that was so exciting and is exciting about Verishop is it's quickly becoming the home for independent brands. And didn't intend to plug for Verishop, but there's a great example of a site that gives people interactive experiences and gives, more importantly, brands that are getting started a voice and a narrative and a unique experience that isn't just a click and buy this on repeat at Amazon. And so I think that's going to be really important. So I think, in summation, I think there's going to be continued focus on privacy. So I think, businesses like Zeta and others that can help brands with that are going to be wildly successful. I think there's going to be an emergence of independent brands, and I think that's going to be a critical way. It's now easier than ever to start a brand and get a voice to that brand, and so that narrative is going to be important and how that's monetized. And then lastly, I think it's just going to come down to execution. So I think brands are going to be, the challenge with new brands coming on is you're going to have to execute and differentiate yourself. But I think those are really going to be the key components. I think those will be topics. Privacy is not going away. That's going to be a topic we're going to come up with next year. And again, I think Zeta is only going to be a key platform to advance that. So.
Great. So Ben, I got a question for you. So, you are in a arguably a very fiercely competitive space for consumer mind, right? We had starting with MySpace to Facebook to Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok. Now everybody's talking about Be Real. How do you think all this new platform coming in change consumer attention? And next 12 to 18 months, are you going to be talking about a new platform, or do you think these platforms will consolidate? What's going to happen in consumer attention space, with all these new platforms coming in?
You're right. It's very competitive. I think that scale is really hard, right? And so you look over the last decade, and you had Instagram, which was acquired by Facebook, obviously, and benefited greatly from the social graph that Facebook had, the monetization engine that Facebook had. It really helped Instagram grow to what it is. You have Snapchat, which grew organically, essentially, not a lot of paid user acquisition, pioneered visual communication. Now, as you mentioned, has 600 million monthly active users. I think you said 500, but
I was a little baited.
So TikTok, a bit of an anomaly here. I mean, a very innovative, unique product outside of China. They also spent billions of dollars in user acquisition, which a startup couldn't do. These are all platforms that have scale into the hundreds of millions or billions of users. You mentioned Be Real. I mean, I think Be Real, interesting product, maybe 5 to 10 million users. We'll see. I think it's really hard to build a platform. It's really hard to monetize, especially now. I think that these incumbents just have a big advantage in terms of network effects and in terms of capital, right? So it's not to say that there will not be disruption from below. There absolutely could be. Be Real is an example of something that's interesting, but it's very rare and very hard, and I think a lot more challenging than it was like a decade ago. We have a minute left, but it's a lot harder, and so I think from our perspective, we are very focused on innovation. We're very focused on building cutting-edge products that actually young people tend to gravitate towards. So we see great growth from 13, 14, 15-year-olds who are coming onto the platform. That's going to continue to be our focus, is winning the hearts and minds of Gen Z. And again, we'll see. I think there's obviously room for innovation, obviously room for new great ideas to come in, especially with augmented reality and virtual reality and other new technologies. But I think for us, we're very focused on optimizing value for our platform, figuring out how to continue to grow our user base, and continuing to innovate.
So Jeanine, we have 41 seconds, but I don't think anybody will kick us out. So I will ask that question and to wrap it up. So as you think about your business, what keeps you up at night, in the world today, and what do you think it's going to be 12 months from now? And it's not only your business, but when you're talking to your peers, what are they concerned about? Is it privacy? Is it more expensive ad buying, or is it economy? Or what do you think the conversation will change 12 months from now?
With 10 seconds to go, was that 4-part question? Okay.
You can just pick one.
Right. And I think the sentiment came up earlier in the day. The only constant is change, right? So that the businesses that will survive, at least the way we think about it, being smart about how we listen, right? The way to listen to the customer has evolved. So that's not going to change. And the systems we put in place to make sure we're authentic and connecting. So the challenges will change, but how do you listen and how do you connect? We're gonna keep coming back to those questions. I think in terms of existential threats, Matt and I've talked about privacy and how do you listen and connect and not be intrusive and kind of not step on those landmines. So I'm gonna kind of keep it at that level, because we can drill down into today, what does that mean? But we're gonna be asking the same question 5 years from now, and there'll be kind of new challenges then. So the way we listen, the way we connect, and kind of navigating privacy as part of that, with 0 seconds to go.
Great. No, thank you so much. I really want to thank everyone. Yeah. Matt coming all the way from Nevada, Jeanine coming all the way from California, and Ben also from California. So thank you for coming here.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Imran.
it. Thank you.
Yeah.